Before we start the process of publishing our app to the App Store and Play Store, we need to test it as much as we can. We've so far been testing the app only on an iPhone 6 simulator. That is not enough. It's very important that we test the app on actual devices before publishing it. Some problems will only appear on actual devices. The React Native site has documentation on how to test with an actual device. I'd recommend that you follow this now and test your app on your iPhone if you have one. But testing the app yourself is not enough either. You should also find early testers among family and friends and get their feedback about the UI. You can use Apple's TestFlight for that. It allows you to beta test with many people by inviting them to your pre-published app. This is a great tool. I'll show you how it works. But first, we need to test the app on Android, and the same deal goes there. If you have an Android device, connect it and do your tests there. I keep a few old Android devices just to test things with, but let's just test our app on an Android emulator. We'll do that in the next video. To test on Android, we need to have an emulator up and running, so let's do that. The Pixel emulator here is the one that we used, so let's start that. And once the emulator is up and running, we can go ahead and do React Native Run Android. The application is loading, and things are working. Let's have the remote debugger open, so Command M and debug.js remotely. Very good, I don't see any problems. Let's test going to a single deal. How about the swipe feature? Swiping seems to work, although it is a little bit slow here on the emulator. This could be an emulator problem, so I'll try and test this on an actual device. However, there is an important problem that we did not see on a bigger device when we were testing with iOS, is that this whole view is not scrollable. So I can't actually reach the button here on this smaller device. This is not an Android-only problem, but it's more obvious here. So this one is scrollable, and you can see the button here, but the other one, since the description of the deal is bigger, we are not seeing the button. So let's make this scrollable. All we need to do in the deal detail component is this top level view here that hosts the deal detail component has to be a scroll view instead of just a view. So scroll view and /scroll view, which means I need scroll view from React Native as well. Let's test that. Hit the R key twice. Now this is scrollable. Very good. Let's also give it some margin down below here so that the button is not right on the edge. So I'll go ahead and do that. So styles.deal, which we do not have. So let's create deal, and I'll just give it a margin bottom of, say, 20. Let me test that real quick. Very good. So now we have a scrollable view, and we can buy this deal. Let me go ahead and test that out. So it is going to http://bakesaleforgood.com on this deal, and a user can buy it. Let's test the search feature. Looks like it's working. However, I don't like that the keyboard here stayed when the search was performed. So when the search is performed, we should probably get rid of the keyboard. So we can probably do that by just blurring out of the search. So let's try that. In the search bar component, we have the text input here. We'll go ahead and give it a ref attribute. The ref attribute is a function, and this function is going to expose the input element here. And I'll go ahead and put it on the instance of this component. So this dot input element equal the input element exposed from this function. So now we can access the text input instance with this dot input element. So what I want to do now is create a new function here. I'll call this function search deals. So this is the local function that is going to perform this .props.search deals. And after that, it will blur the text input. So this is going to receive the search term and pass it along in here. And instead of debouncing this .props.search deals, we're going to debounce this .search deals. And to blur the text input, all we need to do is call this .input element. This is the actual UI input element, and we can do .blur on it. So let's go ahead and test all that. RR. Now we can search. When we search, the search is now blurred and I see the listing. Very good. Here is another problem. So let me show that. So I typed in a search. The search worked. It blurred out and the keyboard was dismissed. And now I pressed into one of the deals from the search. Perfect. Everything is working. When I go back, the search is still active and the search. Before publishing an app, there are two things that you'll probably want to do. Give the app a good icon instead of this default one, and do something about the splash screen, which currently just shows the name of the app and a powered by React Native message. You can close the app to reload it with the splash screen. I just double-clicked on the home button, and when I double-click on the app, the splash screen will splash. So you'll first need to prepare images to use as icons and splash screen if you want to change that as well. Those images should be big. The icon should be a square of at least 1024 pixels, and the splash screen should be a square of at least 2500 pixels. The reason you need to start with these big sizes is that you need to provide different sizes of these assets for different screens. So on a big iPad, for example, the assets will need to be much bigger. So the Bakesale project has those assets ready for us. We can download them from bakesaleforgood.com/images/logo.png. Go ahead and save that somewhere. I'll save it right here on the desktop, bakesale-logo. There's also /splash.png. We'll save that as well. Bakesale splash. Now, the problem is you'll need to use these starting assets to generate many assets with different sizes for the different devices. If you do that manually, you are going to be super frustrated with this process. Luckily, you don't have to. You can use online services to generate all the images needed and just add them to your Xcode project. For example, you can use the Make App Icon service to do that. But there is an even easier way. You can locally generate all the needed icons and do the Xcode needed modifications in one step using this great library, Generator RN Toolbox. So we'll go ahead and do that. You can use this tool to generate many things related to your React Native project, but what we're interested in right now is the icons and splash screen generation. So go ahead and follow the instructions there. You'll need Node, and you'll need to npm install yo and generator rn toolbox. So that's our first step. Make sure that you have a recent version of Node. And npm install -g yo and generator rn toolbox. You also need ImageMagick. ImageMagick is the tool that will be used to generate all these different sizes images. So if you don't have it on Mac, it's as easy as brew install ImageMagick. So let's do that as well. And once we have ImageMagick, we can use the tool to generate those assets. The commands that you need are documented here. So this is the first one that we can use to generate the icon. So I'm going to copy that part and use it with the icon that I just downloaded from bakesaleforgood.com, which I placed under the desktop. So we'll go with bakesalelogo.png. So this command is going to ask you a few questions. The name of the project is Bakesale, and you might get this conflict for contents.json. Just hit yes there to override it. And you can see how this application generated all the needed sizes for all the different devices. So this is probably the easiest way to create the app icon set that is needed for Xcode and Android. So now we just React Native, run iOS to test the new icon. And check it out. The app icon is now the Bake Sale logo. Very good. Now for the splash screen, if you just want to get rid of the powered by React Native and keep the default splash screen, you can do so by opening Xcode. So just run open iOS/bakesale.xcode. This is the Xcode project. If we open up that, under the Bake Sale folder here, there will be a launch screen.xib file. If you click on that, you can see the default launch screen right here. So you can actually just click on Powered by React Native and hit delete to delete it and rebuild your application. And you would have this default splash screen without the Powered by React Native part. But if you want to change the splash screen completely into something different, then you can use this same R. So to put up an app on the TestFlight, you need an Apple developer account. And this does cost money. Once you have the developer account approved, you will see this screen where you can control the membership certificate, iTunes Connect, and other stuff in here. To put an app on TestFlight, we need to register a bundle identifier. Now, we can do this either through the web developer console here or through Xcode. So I'm going to do it through Xcode. We'll go ahead and open iOS/bakesale.xcode project. And if you go to the main screen, you'll see the general tab here. And what we're trying to register is this identifier. And it's by default generated like that. You don't have to use the exact same thing. Usually it's the domain in reverse. So I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to go with com.bakesale for good.bakesale. So this is now my bundle identifier, and I can go to the console and register it, but we can also register it here in the capabilities tab. If you enable features here, Xcode is going to register the app ID immediately. So let me enable the push notification feature. You need to choose a team here, so we can go ahead and do that. It will ask you to log in with your Apple ID. And once you do, you should see the default team here. So I'll go ahead and select that. So just by enabling this push notification, now the app ID is registered. And you can go to certificates, IDs, and profiles to make sure the app ID was registered successfully. So now that we have an app ID, we need to create the app on the iTunes Connect. Go to iTunes Connect right here and go to My Apps. Click on this plus sign, select New App. It's an iOS app. And the name is Bake Sale, language is English, and here is the bundle ID, the one that I just registered through Xcode. And give the app also some kind of unique identifier here. So I'll go with 00042. Create. So it looks like the name Bake Sale is already used, so we'll pick another one. And you'll need to pick a different unique name as well. So I'm going to go with Bake Sale for good. And you'll get to this screen, which has App Store information, features, TestFlight, and activity. And what we need is TestFlight. So if you go to TestFlight, it will give you an empty screen because we don't have any builds yet. So the next step is to create a build for our app and submit it to the App Store. And we can do both through Xcode. So going back to Xcode, every time you want to do a build, you want to increment the version here. Either increment the major version, minor version number, or the build number. Now, this is our first build, so we don't need to increment. We do need to change this target into a generic iOS device. And after doing so, we go to Product and pick Archive. And the archive option means build a release that we can upload to the App Store. This step is probably going to take some time. If you get this screen, just choose Always Allow, and you'll end up on this screen that lists all the archives that you have on the system. So what you need to do next is to upload to the App Store. Now this is going to ask you a few questions. Just stick with the defaults. So click Next, automatically manage signing, Next. And you should end up with a screen like this. Click Upload. And if everything works, you'll get the Upload Successful screen. If you go back to the iTunes Connect console and refresh, click on iOS, you'll see the build that we just uploaded and it will be in the processing stage. So this is going to take a few minutes, just give it some time. And you should get an email when it's done. Once you get that email that the app has completed processing, you might see a screen like this. I have a build, but it's missing compliance. This is related to encryption, so just go ahead and click on this and click on Provide Expert Compliance Information and just pick No. The app does not use any encryption. And start internal testing. Once you see this ready to test, you are ready to send this application for internal users. And the cool thing is, you don't have to go through the app review process to test it with internal users. If you want to test it with external users, you have to submit the app for review. So to add internal testers, you want to click here, Add iTunes Connect Users. And in here, you should see the list of to build and release for Android, we need to generate a signing key. And we can use Key Tool to do that. The React Native site has a guide article about that. Before we go through this article, let me explain some of the terms you're going to see here. So an APK is basically the Android binary format. This is comparable to iOS's IPA or Windows exe files. We're going to use the key tool to generate a key store file. This key store file is like your certificate. This file is really important. It identifies that you or anyone you share this file with is authorized to publish a new version of your app. And if you lose your file, you will not be able to publish any new versions of your app. So make sure that you keep this file secure and backed up. We're going to have to work with some Gradle variables here. And Gradle is basically the build tool that Android uses. So you'll have to edit some files to basically add the certificate to the build. So let's go ahead and go through these steps one by one. So the first thing, I'm going to copy this key tool command, paste it here, and I'll change a few things. I'm going to call this bake sale key. And I'll give it an alias of bake sale. So bakesale-key.keystore, that would be the name of the generated file. And this command is basically saying generate this key store file with this alias and make it valid for 10,000 days. The command is going to prompt for a password. And this password is super important because, again, without it, you cannot publish any new versions to your app. So answer the other questions here. And once you're done, you should see the bakesale key.keystore file in this directory. Now, this file does not belong to your source control, so make sure you don't commit that. Next, you want to edit this file. And if it doesn't exist, just create it. So I'll add this file and copy these properties in here into the file. And use the names that you used for the file. So we used bakesale key and just bakesale. And you want to also put the password in here. There is a way to store these passwords in your keychain instead of having them in plain text here. The guide has a link to do that. The next step, you want to go under Android, under App, and edit the build.gradle file. This is a big file. So what you want to add is you want to add this signing config section. So add it here under the default config. And also you want to add this line under the build types release section. So look for build types and you'll see a release section in here. So add the signing config.release line under here. Once you're done with these steps, you want to run this command in your app directory. But before you run that command, move the key store file to under Android app so that it can find it. Now we can run this command, basically cd into Android and run the Gradle assemble release command. So you should see a build successful message. And now we have under Android app build outputs APK. If you list the file under that folder, you'll see the app release APK, which is the file that you need to use to submit this app to the Google Play Store. To submit that APK to the Google Play Store, you want to go to Google Play Console, log in with your developer account, click on Create Application, and we'll give it a title, Bake Sale. And you'll need to fill the information. You need to fill up the description, and you need to upload screenshots and logo. And once you're done doing that, you'll have a screen to upload the signed release APK file that we just generated. Thank you for taking this course, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I know it might have been a little bit challenging in parts, but trust me, it gets easier. You've made a great investment learning React Native because its popularity is unmatched and there is a big demand for React Native developers. So what's next? Focus on building as many apps as you can. Get yourself in trouble. Get used to see and appreciate the big red screen because the more problems you face, the better is your knowledge. This course did not cover all the React Native APIs. There is a lot more to explore. Get comfortable reading the documentation and using the examples. And finally, working with React Native is no doubt a lot more pleasant than having to deal with Swift and Java. But do not dismiss the idea of learning Swift and Java. To become a better React Native developer, you need to be comfortable going native when needed. I encourage you to learn the basics of native iOS and Android development next. That's what I'm doing.